This ain't a goddamn field trip, people. This is a fucking war!
In this movie brew, we're going to talk about George A. Romero's Day of the Dead, starring Laurie Cardille as Sarah, Joseph Pilato as Captain Rhodes, Terry Alexander as John, Jarlath Conroy as Bill, Richard Liberty as Dr. Logan, Sherman Howard as Bub, and Gary Howard Clark as Steele. George Romero had a rough idea for 3 of the Dead movies when Night of the Living Dead was being scripted, with each movie representing a third of the overall narrative. And in the early 80s, Romero began to work on what he intended to be the Gone with the Wind of zombie films. Romero wrote a 200-page script that involved the scientists living above ground in a fortress protected by electric fences, and the military lived safely underground. There was also a small army of trained zombies, and the conclusion of the trilogy was being set up to be much more brutal than what we eventually got. Originally given a budget of $7 million to make this film, when Romero pressed that the film was going to be released unrated so as to not have to deal with the MPAA again, as they did with Dawn of the Dead, the budget was cut in half to $3.5 million. In light of the budget cuts, Romero had to scale down his script, and it took him a lot of time and rewrites to fit his concepts into his budget constraints. Interestingly, the 200-page script is considered the first draft. The 200-page script is considered the first original script for the film, and to date there have been no copies that have surfaced. It is speculated that this draft was rejected by the United Film Distribution Company because it would have been far too expensive to finance, even if they were shooting for an R rating. Romero further scaled down the scope of his story down to a 165-page script. This version has often been referred to as the original script, but this is inaccurate. He further condensed this script down to 104 pages and labeled it his second version, second draft, and was still unsuccessful in getting the story within his budget. Romero eventually drastically altered the original story concept and produced a shooting draft of a script that was only 88 pages. Sarah, John, Bill, Miguel, Dr. Logan, Bub, and Captain Rhodes are the only characters from the original script that made it into the final film. Casting information is scarce. Joseph Pilato was cast as Rhodes, and Pilato feels it was due to the budget. He also stated he pretty much just gave it to me. I don't know if he auditioned other people, but it was very quick. I came in, and it was like, you got it. Pilato had been in 2 of Romero's films prior, though, Dawn of the Dead and Night Riders. While speculating, it could be said that Laurie Cardille was likely cast through her father, Bill Cardille, who had a role in Night of the Living Dead and, despite being a native to Sharon, PA, was known mostly for his chiller theater in the Pittsburgh area. Cardille's character apparently evolved from the original draft into something quite different. As Laurie Cardille has said, he could have made me this sexy little twit bouncing around with a gun, much more the sexual element. But he made her intelligent and strong. In fact, whenever I would try to make her a little more emotional, he would not allow me to do that. Filming took place in the fall of 1984 in Pennsylvania and Florida. All scenes that took place above ground were filmed in several locations around Florida where Romero was living at the time. The opening scene specifically was filmed in Fort Myers, Florida, with the fenced-in area of the compound and the helicopter landing pad being filmed at Bowman's Beach Helistop in Sanibel. The underground scenes were filmed at an old limestone mine in Wampum, PA. The mine was converted into a storage facility in 1963, and, fun fact, this location is about 20 minutes from where I live. While the facility was kept at a constant 50 degrees Fahrenheit, its high humidity was hell for the crew's equipment and props. Mechanical and electrical failures were a constant problem through filming also, and caused several of Tom Savini's props to fail during filming. Despite the difficulties, though, Savini still went on to win a 1985 Saturn Award for Best Makeup Effects. The mine is in a remote location, and this caused complications with transportation for crew members and equipment to the site. Cast and crew would oftentimes just sleep in the mine overnight and avoid the lengthy travel to and from the location. Zombie extras were recruited from Pittsburgh, and those who had worked on previous films were given preference. The extras were paid $1 a day and given a hat that read, "I was a zombie in the Day of the Dead." The film opens to an empty Florida town where the dead seemingly have taken over completely. And let's not gloss over how incredible this fucking zombie looks with its tongue hanging out and half of its jaw missing. Bill, John, Sarah, and Miguel are looking for survivors in the neighborhood, and coming up empty-handed, they head back to their base at the Everglades. Upon landing, they find out that Army Major Cooper has died. We also get a glimpse that the stress of the situation is starting to affect everybody, most notably Miguel, who is coming apart at the seams. We learn that in the underground facility, a group of scientists are trying to find a solution to the pandemic, with the military assigned to protect them. Inside, Private Steele and Rickles tell Miguel he needs to come with them to round up more dumb fucks, as they call them. Sarah objects, stating Miguel needs rest, and his participation in the roundup could be hazardous in his exhausted and mentally unstable state. She volunteers to go, but Miguel still goes along. The roundup goes smoothly until they try to get the second zombie, at which point Miguel drops the pole that was secured to the zombie's collar. Acting fast, Sarah secures the pole, but Steele loses his shit on Miguel for almost getting Rickles killed. Afterwards, Sarah tries to sedate Miguel, but he protests.
Steele.
While filming this scene, Lori Cardille told Anthony DeLeo Jr. to actually slap her to make it more authentic. In the end, she eventually sedates him as he calms down. Our two factions are at odds. Dr. Logan, whom the soldiers call Frankenstein, believes that the zombies can be trained to become docile and has gone through numerous test subjects.
You can destroy my specimens, but what about the millions more that are waiting to greet you outside? Do you really think you can blow the piss out of them? All of them? They have you in a hopeless situation strategically. You're lost. Well, you're lost unless...
Unless what? Unless what, Frankenstein?
Unless you can make them behave.
Whereas Captain Rhodes doesn't feel the scientists are doing enough and is not happy with the loss of the 5 men in his group.
Where does it say we should do any one thing but shoot the mothers in the head?
Dwindling supplies and no communication with any other survivors and the slow progress that the research is making ratchet these tensions even further. Rhodes has taken command after Cooper's death and has called a meeting. He makes his intentions clear during the meeting, and during a tense scene in which Sarah tries to leave the meeting, Rhodes orders Steele to shoot her. Afterwards, Rhodes makes it clear that he is giving the orders.
Nothing happens around here without my knowing about it. And anybody fucks with my command, they get court-martialed. They get executed.
Dr. Logan hopes Rhodes will cooperate if shown real progress of his research, especially of his work with Bub, a docile zombie who seems to remember some parts of his past life and partakes in very rudimentary human behavior like listening to music, trying to use a shaving razor, and even going so far as to repeat words, albeit rather garbled. When Rhodes is in the room with Dr. Logan and Bub, Bub even salutes Rhodes.
Apparently he was in the military. Return a salute and see what he does.
You want me to salute that pile of walking pus? Salute my ass.
And Dr. Logan gives Bub an unloaded pistol, which Bub then demonstrates some knowledge of how to use the weapon, even attempting to discharge the unloaded gun at Rhodes. During another zombie roundup, 2 soldiers, Miller and Johnson, are killed when Miguel once again loses control of his zombie and it attacks Miller, who discharges his gun while being attacked, killing Johnson. Sarah kills the zombie and Miguel loses his shit, attacks another zombie and is promptly bitten on the arm, which further drives Miguel into hysterics and he runs off. Steele shoots the zombie that bit Miguel and Miller begs Steele to end his life, not wanting to be reanimated. Sarah runs after Miguel, catching up to him outside of Bill and John's trailer. John tries to hold Miguel and Sarah hits him in the back of the head with a rock, amazingly not killing him. While he's down and out though, acting quickly, Sarah uses John's machete to amputate Miguel's bitten arm. While filming this scene, the original prop was too sturdy, and when Lori Cardille struck the prosthetic arm with the machete, it bounced off. Tom Savini remade the arm out of wax, and the machete severed the prosthetic as it was intended. They then cauterized their wound with a makeshift torch, and Rhodes and Steele show up. John and Bill draw their guns, and there's a standoff between the groups, with Rhodes declaring that the experiments are over and the captured zombies will be killed. Sarah finally breaks down after everything that has happened, with John consoling her. Sarah and Bill go back to the lab area for supplies for Miguel and discover an audio tape of a clearly insane Dr. Logan addressing his mother and father, along with finding Johnson's decapitated head, reanimated by Dr. Logan. This head prop This prop of effects artist Greg Nicotero's head was used by Nicotero during a holiday break during filming to play a prank on his mother that she apparently didn't like. But anyways, they leave the room and see Dr. Logan leave from a refrigerator room towards the room Bub is being held in. Following him, they witness him give Bub his rewards for doing well, with Sarah and Bill being horrified when they realize that Dr. Logan is feeding Bub the remains of the soldiers. As they make a move to leave, Rhodes and the remaining soldiers show up and confront Dr. Logan. They drag him off to the refrigerator and find the butchered remains of Miller and Johnson. Rhodes, enraged by what he sees, shoots Dr. Logan and leaves his body with the corpses. He orders Bill and Sarah to be stripped of their weapons and then take the pair to the corral area. Rhodes has the last remaining scientist Fisher rounded up and orders John to get the helicopter ready to leave. To emphasize that he's not fucking around, he executes Fisher by shooting him in the head. Rhodes orders Sarah and Bill into the cage leading to the area where the crowd zombies are. As this is going on, though, the elevator alarm goes off, at which point Rhodes orders Steele and Rickles to check it out. In the meantime, John attacks Rhodes and Torres, knocking them both out and stripping them of their weapons before heading off to find Bill and Sarah in the corral caverns. Steele and Rickles discover that Miguel has used the elevator to go to the surface and disabled the control box for the elevator. On the surface, Miguel opens the gate to the fence, and as he's being mauled by the undead horde, he activates the elevator to return below. The zombies flood into the complex and the soldiers flee, but Rhodes takes the motorized cart, leaving the others behind to escape on foot. Torres and Rickles both get eaten while attempting to flee the horde, but Steele makes it to the main area of the complex and attempts to shoot Bub, who has escaped. While he's waiting to shoot him through a window, he backs into a group of zombies and gets bitten on the neck. He does manage to take a few of them out before realizing he's trapped, at which point he shoots himself in the head to avoid being eaten alive. Rhodes manages to secure a gun and some ammunition, but is confronted by Bub, who attempts to shoot Rhodes. Rhodes makes to escape, but is shot in the shoulder by Bub, who pursues him, shooting him a couple more times in the process. Rhodes is staggering, but still alive. When he opens a door to escape Bub, he's greeted by the zombie horde. And the horde grabs him and tears him apart as Bub mockingly salutes him. Little thing about this scene, the choke on him line was improvised by Joe Pilato, and he also said that they used real pig intestines for this scene. And the refrigerators they were left in didn't stay cold during a power outage, resulting in the intestines starting to smell. He claims that to this day he can still smell the rather repugnant odor of the intestines that were used. John eventually finds Bill and Sarah in the catacombs, and the three make their way to the surface, dealing with the zombies that they come across. As they reach the surface and make for the helicopter, upon opening the door, Sarah is attacked by a zombie. Then it's revealed it's just to be part of a nightmare, as Sarah wakes up on a beach while John is fishing and Bill is feeding seagulls. Sarah, relieved, looks down and crosses off the day on her makeshift calendar. And that was Day of the Dead. My personal favorite out of the original 3 of the Dead movies that Romero made. The movie gets a lot of shit, and it wasn't received as well by critics as the previous films in the series, but let me explain why I hold this film near and dear to my heart. Firstly, I like the bleakness of it. More so than ever, I feel like in this film it is clear that the human race is quite possibly doomed to extinction. The characters in this movie are mentally stretched to their limits, dealing with the undead menace, running out of supplies, and unknown as to whether or not they're the only surviving humans left. It's theorized by Dr. Logan in the film that the zombies outnumber humans 400,000 to 1. Criticism is often leveled at the amount of yelling that the characters do in this film. It's never really bothered me. These are characters who they're clearly divided into two factions, and they do not agree on how they should go about dealing with the zombie menace. Tensions are high, and most of the characters don't like each other, so it makes sense that they wouldn't really be civil to each other most of the time. The soldiers are not really likable, but in the instance of Steele, while he acts like an asshole most of the time, there are moments where he shows that he can have a human side. He's hesitant to follow the order to shoot Sarah and doesn't act on the order until his life is threatened by Rhodes. Rhodes especially isn't likable, but these are characters that have been underground and in seclusion for God knows how long. For some of these people, their sanity checked out a long time ago. The idea that the zombies can learn or be trained to be docile is something that was later used in films and other forms of media such as Warm Bodies, Fido, and Even Romero's own Land of the Dead, which has a lot of elements in it that he intended to use in this film but had to be removed during the scripting process to make the movie work within the confines of his budget. Bubwell, at a casual glance, could be seen as a comedic and somewhat goofy inclusion into the film. Feels like a natural evolution of the themes that were only briefly mentioned in Dawn of the Dead. While maybe not as slick and intelligent as Romero's previous Dead films, Day of the Dead still offers an interesting glimpse into a group of survivors trying to make it through the situation they're in, showing how everybody deals with it differently. The soldiers want to use force on the undead menace, and the scientists want to try to find a more non-violent means. John and Bill seem to just have their little trailer and makeshift patio away from the politics of the two groups. Miguel is clearly cracking under the pressure, and Sarah seems to be holding herself together on the outside, while suffering from nightmares. The makeup effects are outstanding, and probably one of, if not the best, of Savini's large body of work in the effects field. The lighting for the film has been criticized as cheap and made for video, but it lends to the claustrophobic vibe and look of the mine location in which the film is shot. This is an underground bunker, not a slickly designed shopping mall after all. Day of the Dead is often overlooked by fans of Romero's movies as being lesser than the previous films, and by horror fans in general. But personally, I love the movie, and I suggest if you haven't seen Day of the Dead, give it a watch.
This is a fucking loony bin. I ain't being paid enough to work in a fucking loony bin.
I ain't being paid at all.